Let's put the Personalised book journal from Brook to the test. It's an A5 pre-printed reading journal with a classy cover, but is it the ideal reading journal for you? Today we're finding out. Hi, I'm Erin, and I like testing out pre-printed reading journals so you can find the right fit for your reading habits. This is my first time looking at anything from Brook. Back in December, I opened an advent calendar that I thought was from them, but turned out to be a fake, so I'm glad to have made a legitimate purchase from them this time. This review was not sponsored by Brook in any way. I purchased this reading journal with my own money, and all opinions expressed in this video are my own. As a stationery enthusiast and keeper of my own DIY reading journal that I set up for myself, I've got to say the website doesn't give you much to go on here. It comes in 2 cover colors, which are both gorgeous and also customizable with your initials if you like, but beyond that, all they indicate is that the journal has a progress tracker you can color in, a TBR list for books you want to read, a master list of books already read, review spreads, extra book lists, inspiring quotes, and note pages for anything else you'd like to add yourself. We'll have a very thorough flip through of the notebook to see what those pages look like, and I'll also test them out with my own reading history from this year to see how they function. The website doesn't say anything about the type of paper used in the journal or how many review spreads or tracking pages are included, so at this stage I'd hazard a guess that this notebook is aimed at book lovers much more than stationery lovers, which is a little bit different to the reading journals I've tested before. Turns out the stationery and book lovers Venn diagram has a lot of overlap. The Brook book journal sells for £28.95 from marthabrook.com, which is their main site based out of the UK, or $49.95 Australian on their Australian site, since they've also got a small studio based in Melbourne. They have free delivery thresholds on both sites at £50 for the UK site and $100 Australian for the Australian site, but shipping costs for orders under those amounts will likely vary depending on where you are in the world. So let's dive in and find out what's really inside the Brook book journal.
So this is the journal. I do love the gold embossing on the linen cover. It's a very classy look for a journal. And you can also personalize them. I got my initials down here. I do also really like the look of the spine. It's very sleek. And the only branding, we've got a little Brook logo on the back. So pretty sleek and classy. Let's have a look from start to finish. When we open it up, we've got a navy end sheet that matches that little, what would that be, like a 5th binding on the cover. We've got square corners on the pages, which is not a deal breaker, but I do prefer them rounded when I'm going to be writing in things. Book journal, impactful, simple. This journal belongs to, this is a pretty thin paper. At a guess, I'd say probably 80, maybe 90 GSM. Lots of room to write who it belongs to there, so if this was a gift, you could have a little dedication. I really like this C.S. Lewis quote as a lover of tea. And we've got a little bookshelf tracker over here. Color in a book each time you finish reading to track your progress. I've just counted and there are 52 books here, so I guess we're assuming a book a week. But there is a bit of space to add extras if that isn't enough for you. I'm curious to see if we get more of this, but from what I can see ghosted through the page, it's not bad ghosting from the printing on the next ones, but there, you can see a touch of it through. Nope, that's it, that's all you get. My to be read list. I'm having an issue with this immediately because I feel like in this context, to be read maybe needs hyphens to make it really clear what's going on there. Otherwise this kind of doesn't make sense. Or maybe quotation marks around it, you know, my to be read list would kind of work too. The design's very simple, very classic. We've got serif font for the title on the page, and then title and author column headers are just a really nice clean all capital sans serif. Decent amount of space here for your to be reads. It looks like there's going to be more of this because who doesn't have a huge TBR? And there is a little bit of space at the top of the page there for you to add some decoration if you want to. You know I love to add some washi tape. Books I've read, we've got our ribbon bookmark here too. Looks like there's just the one, which maybe that's all you'll need, we'll find out. This is pretty straightforward as well. I do really like that there is a column with the number tracking, how many books you know you've read. This is also going up to 52, so that's kind of nice that it aligns with what you've got back here on that bookshelf tracker. Where is it? Just sliced my thumb on a knife, so I'm feeling a little bit less dexterous than usual. So there were 52 book spaces here, and you've got 52 over here as well. Something that does kind of bother me about this is that this is very clearly a header, but I'd like to see that R capitalized just to make it really clear that that's a title, you know. Use this table to track your book journal progress. I don't know that that necessarily needed an explainer line, but that's okay. It hasn't taken up any extra space. Title, author, and rating, and you've got the star ratings pre-printed in here. They are kind of grayed out, so they're not really bold until you color it in. I like that. They've got a nice thick line on them too. They actually look like very much like my star rating. In fact, oh no, my star rating stamp would be a touch bigger. These pages aren't numbered, so there's no index or anything. We've got a notes section over here, another quote. Once you have read a book you care about, some part of it is always with you. I really like that idea. Okay, and then we get into our reviews. Title and author, format, color in checkbox situation, paperback, hardback, audio book, ebook, genre, date published, my review, space to put your star rating there, date started, date finished, summary of the book. Oh, that's an interesting one. That's not something I usually include in my own reading journal things because I figure I can just find that on Goodreads if I don't remember. Hopefully if I'm writing about it in a reading journal, I will remember though, approximately what happened. My review and thoughts. Not a huge amount of space there, but that's okay because we still have another page. Quotes and other notes. Half a page for quotes is probably too much for me, but if you had more than one quote from a book that you wanted to add in here, then that would make lots of sense. Oh, there's also a little number 1 up in the top corner here that I just noticed. So I'm imagining that, yeah, as you go through that will still number the book, which is a cool little touch actually. I really like that. And other notes. So I guess if this isn't enough room for you to finish out your review, you can overflow onto here. Or if there's anything else that you like to keep track of in a book review, things like book club discussion questions, or if you wanted to make sure that you had a space to include a book cover. You know I love to include book covers in my reading journal, so I typically try to find a way to work that into this kind of reading journal as well. And down the bottom here, who would I recommend this book to? This feels a little superfluous to me. I don't know that I would actually find myself using that section. I can see it being useful for like teachers and librarians, and maybe like from a marketing perspective, but I don't think as a personal user of a reading journal that would be super helpful for me. Number 2, I'm imagining this is going to be another 52 pages of the same thing, right? 52. All right, and we've got some more notes, lined pages on the right, and on the left we've got another quote. This one's from Lloyd Alexander. Keep reading. It's one of the most marvelous adventures that anyone can have. Having a bit of trouble with the spine at this point, not getting a super flat kind of table lay here. It's not terrible, but if we have a little look at the binding, it's got quite a little bow going on there, so a bit tricky to get your pen in here. You're going to need to maybe clip this down. That would help for sure. It's actually really funny. I used to use notebooks like this all the time when I was younger, and it never bothered me in the least. I never even thought about it. But now that I have these journals that fully lay flat across the binding, this would really bother me. But we're not staying here to make any notes at this point, so we don't need the clips. Let's carry on. My favorite books. Okay, that's a cool little addition. Still, I really wish this had caps. Just a list, kind of like a Hall of Fame, I suppose, but it's pretty dry. Title and author. And I suppose if you wanted to, on the notes page over here, you could pop a little note on the corresponding line about, oh wait, do they line up? Not quite, but you could kind of make it work. Pop a little note about why it's your favorite. In all fairness, I have a Hall of Fame in my journal and I just put the book cover and that's it. So that's, you know, I can't throw stones about that being pretty simple, but you could make it work, you know, pop some notes over here about why they made the favorite books list, if that wasn't already included in your review or you wanted to have it again. Books that made me laugh. Okay, this is kind of like a superlatives game, you know, or awards. Books that made me laugh. Notes. Books that made me cry. This is kind of handy when you're recommending things to friends, right? And you're like, I really want a tearjerker right now. Refer to your books that made me cry page. Books I wish I could read again for the very first time. For me, that would be the same as the favorites, but maybe there's some nuance there for some folks. Then we've got a book club list. I actually like that. If you're in multiple book clubs, maybe you'd need to use a color coding system or something to differentiate those. Notes on the facing page. So I guess if this was not enough space for you, you could use any of the notes on the facing pages to continue the list as well. And then we have dot grid paper. Wait, how many? 14 pages, 14 leaves. So like, I guess 28 pages worth of dot grid paper for any other trackers that you would like to include for yourself at the end there. Little branded page. Oh, what's going on with this thread? Is that the binding? It is the binding. I feel like that's probably not supposed to be like that, but it is anyway. Branded Martha Brook page, and then we've got our lovely end sheets. and that is the end of the journal. This is definitely the simplest one that I've looked at so far. I see now why there's only one ribbon bookmark, because whatever number review you're up to, it would just, you know, this is book 11, I'm up to here. That makes sense. Definitely pretty chill. If you do average about a book a week, this would probably be a good fit. 52 books in a year feels like a decent median, or maybe average. I don't know, I'm making that up, but it seems like it to me. So I can see this working for someone who's looking for a really simple reading journal, but I never totally know what I think until I actually jump in and use it. So shall we do that? I don't feel like I need to try and print any book covers for this one. We're just going to jump in and see how we go. It's a little intimidating, to be honest, that much space. What have I got in here? I actually think this would be so cute stamped, so I'm going to stamp this one. This journal's very plain. It's kind of, I guess, classic, minimalist, so that just makes me want to personalize it as much as I can. Hence, we're going to stamp my name. I'll link the stamps in the description in case you are keen on also doing this. Be an interesting test of the paper too, because this ink pad might go straight through. We'll find out. The opposite side of this page is actually a quote, so it wouldn't be the end of the world if it did. I'm going to put my last name too because there's room. I suppose you could actually pop your contact details here if you were thinking you'd be traveling with this notebook a bit, in case it got lost and you wanted it to be returned to you. There we go. I already like it better. And our cover is this beautiful pink, so I'm actually just going to chuck a little bit of pink lace PET tape down here because I can't leave well enough alone. Oh, I put that one down kind of wonky, and I'm so used to my nice thick papers. I went to peel it up and I've heard the paper start to tear and I went, ooh, we're not doing that. Let me see if I can be really sneaky about this. It's tearing right at the end there. Maybe I can just smooth it out. Wish me luck. Nope. It's gonna have a fold in it for all of time. That's okay. It happens. I already like this so much better. I wanna score the tape right on the binding, but I've gotta be so careful with this thin paper that I'm only cutting the tape and not the paper underneath, or I'll ruin the book. You could, of course, continue on with that decoration if you so desired, but I'm gonna leave it there. Okay, we do have, it's like in between ghosting and bleeding over here. Let me hold it right up so you can see. Just under large enough there, you can see the stamping has come through. That is with the VersaFine oil-based ink, so like that's probably pretty hardcore. Maybe a water-based ink would be better. For our progress tracker here, I thought I would test out a few pens. I've got a mild liner, a Tombow dual brush pen, a Pentel brush touch pen, and an Artistro brush-tipped paint marker. This is really just to put the paper to the test, so we'll start with the mild liner. I'm going to just fill that in. I don't expect this paper to hold up to markers. I mean, I don't think it'll be terrible, but I think we will see it. I think we'll have some ghosting. This is the Tombow, the Pentel. Wow, they're almost the same color. And the paint marker, really thick brush tip on this one. So this will be, yeah, couldn't stay in the lines. See, this would be fun to just decorate the page with like tea and book stickers. In fact, I've got my handy dandy sticker book with me right here. Maybe for consistency, we'll pop a bit of this lace on first, making it feel like it's themed, you know. There is so much cat hair stuck to this. A little bit there. Okay. Tea and books. Surely. Oh yeah, here's some teapots. This one's got a little fold in it, so he can be the first to be sacrificed. Couple of little tea cuppies. That is so cute. Okay. I'm really enjoying making it my own, but I would love if it was already a little bit more, if it had a bit more personality, you know? Okay, let's have a look at how those pens held up over here. You can definitely see, I think that's the Tombow. Oh no, that's actually the Pentel brush sign pen. You can see there's actually the tiniest little kiss of bleed through from the paint marker. But the mild liner's done pretty well, so I would say if you have mild liners at your disposal and you wanted to use this journal, that would be the way to go. Otherwise, maybe pencils or something like the friction markers, because they really sit on top of the paper. They don't kind of absorb into it. My to be read list. I'm actually going to copy this straight out of what's currently in my own reading journal for, I call it my maybe next, because to be read feels too task oriented for me. And I'm going to use this pen. This is the Tom Studio Lumos Pro Duo. I've got it inked up with Tom Studio black ink in the fine liner nib. This is the 0.3, I think. So just a straight copy from here. I'm very deliberately trying to get this list down below where we coloured in on the other side because I want to see what kind of ghosting we can see. Really finding at this point that I need something that's a bit too tall, something under this side of the book to hold it up. Okay, let's have a look back here. Actually, the ghosting is really minimal. I'm impressed. I thought it would be mostly text over here. I thought it would be way more visible than that, but we've really got away with it, so that's great. I'm gonna leave the to be read list there because that's all that I have in my own journal so far. Okay, books I've read. Let's just fill this out with what I've read so far this year. And I'm taking this information from my story graph because then I can have the review along with the title and author, whereas in my own journal, I don't have the rating, like the star rating included on my books I've read list. So this will be more efficient. As it stands, I've finished 20 books so far this year and it is April. So I don't think 52 books would totally fit a whole year for me, but I think it would be pretty close at the current rate. I read 96 books last year, so it definitely wouldn't have served me a whole year last year, but I've slowed down a lot this year. Something I've really learned about myself is that I find colouring in these star ratings really difficult if they're not my star rating stamp. For some reason, that's a lot easier. And I think it's because the edges of the stamp are really thick. So there's less space to fill in. You don't have to be as precise. If you want to be really precise filling in these stars, you're gonna have to take your time. Oops, I drew too much of the star on this one. Just gonna use a white paint marker to cover up the other half. Okay, this works pretty well. I did find for one book there wasn't really enough room to write the whole title. The League of Gentlewomen Witches by India Holton have kind of smushed into the next box, but if you had a really long name, I guess you could write smaller and kind of make it 2 lines and try and make it fit. I've also run out of space for a book that had 2 authors. Make My Wish Come True by Alison Derrick and Rachel Lippincott. That one has become really tight in the box there, but practically speaking, like in order to change the page layout, like you'd have to basically rob something. Like there's not a huge amount of margin. I like that they've included the number, so like I don't know how they would change that layout to make that have more space for the title, but I think it worked okay. There's no section for DNF, like did not finish, books that you decided not to complete. I guess that's fine. I would put it in one of the notes parts for sure. I thought we'd do 2 of these review pages to really test them out. One where I just fill it out straight and work out what I think of it, and then for the second one, any changes that I would make. So for this one, we're going to do Electra by Jennifer Saint. I read this one on ebook. I'm going to colour in the circle because that feels fun to me. Storygraph lists the genres for this one as fiction, fantasy, historical, and literary. I'm going to go with mythology, maybe. Date published. I'm just going to put the year. 2022. I gave it 3.25. These stars are a bit bigger, which I think actually makes them a touch easier. I've discovered I like to just draw a 5-pointed star over the top. That seems to be the easiest way for me, except for when you have to do a partial star like this. That's quite fiddly. I started this one on the 27th of February and I finished it on the 9th of March. Summary of the book. Okay. Okay, I sort of almost feel like that's all I need. It feels a little like a worksheet in school, which maybe is a little unfair to say because it's not that different to what I've had in other reading journals, but for some reason this one does just feel like homework. I actually did not note down any quotes from this book, so I'm just going to refer to Goodreads and see what we can come up with here. I'll put a bit more effort into this one. Been writing pretty messily. That's just my actual standard handwriting, but nope, it's falling apart already. Nope, it's just gonna be my normal writing. It feels like there's no point, you know, in making it super pretty. You could, of course, you could decorate and stuff, but I don't know that I care enough. I have no other notes. I guess I would recommend it to people who like mythology. Okay, so it functions, it works pretty well. I really don't think who would I recommend this book to is a useful field for me. I would maybe change it to would I read it again? in which case this book gets a no. Let's try another one. Let's do a book that I really, really loved. Let's do First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. Also read this one on ebook. This one's a contemporary romance, published in 2025. I started it on February 22, finished it February 26. I nearly wrote 25. I gave this one 5 whole stars. It was the first book I had rated 5 stars in over a year because I changed my rating system. More on that up here if you're interested in the corner. Okay, summarizing the book is really hard actually. My writing's getting really terrible towards the bottom of the page because it's very hard to get down there with this cavern underneath the book. Again, I'm going to refer to Goodreads for a quote. Okay, this is probably a case where I would put some decorative things in this other notes section, probably the book cover. I'm just gonna stick some more of what I've been using so far. Cute little, I feel like this goes with the cover anyway. This book cover is pink, at least partially. I'm gonna stick some more stuff from my sticker book down just to see how it would look. There are some croissants in this book actually, I think, from memory, so that will work. Okay, so that was actually really fun just to add a little something there. You could make it really fit the book if you wanted to, or just the vibes. I think that's good for, I'm not gonna add a who would I recommend this book to? Honestly, I'd recommend that book to everyone. I don't remember what was over here now. Weirdly just looked at it. Oh, right, my favorite books. Books that made me laugh, books that made me cry, books I wish I could read again for the first time. Book club list. I'm not gonna fill those ones out. I don't feel like there's any particular need. I would probably add stats in the notes sections, like monthly stats, yearly stats, down the back where these dot grid spaces are, but I feel like that gives us a pretty good idea of what's involved here with this journal.
I love rating reading journals out of 5 stars as though they're a book themselves, so I'm rating the Martha Brook book journal out of these 5 categories: book cover, internal aesthetic, practicality and function, and enjoyment. I think the book cover is gorgeous, and the added personalization at no extra cost makes it incredibly giftable. It's definitely giving millennial girly, especially the pink version, but as a millennial girly myself, I do really like it. The spine is descriptive while unassuming, so it should look pretty good on a shelf next to a collection of Emily Henry paperbacks. I'm giving the cover 4 out of 5 stars. Next up is the internal aesthetic, which I honestly find a little lacking. This book journal is as no frills as it gets, almost giving worksheet vibes rather than a fun tool to help you remember your reads and celebrate your favorite books. Of course, it does leave lots of room for your own personalization if you're into that, but the plainness didn't do it for me. 2.5 stars. Practicality and function is arguably the most important part of a reading journal, and I find this one is actually very serviceable, especially if you're new to tracking your reading and read fairly casually. However, if you read more than 52 books in a year, or if you're interested in keeping reading stats in something like an end-of-year wrap-up, this probably isn't the reading journal for you. Otherwise, you can add this yourself with the notes pages and with data from your book tracking app of choice. It's bare bones, but it works, so I'm giving it 3.5 stars for practicality and function. And finally, enjoyment. Was this book journal fun to use? Not especially. At times it felt like doing homework, which is not ideal for the extension of your fun hobby, but it definitely improved when I added some decorative flair of my own with tapes and stickers. Is it better to have a blank slate that you can then make your own, or a pretty page that you love from the get-go? When it's pre-printed, I would always prefer the latter, but there's nothing that entirely put me off either, so I'm going with 3 stars for enjoyment. That brings us to a score of 13 out of 20, which then gives us an overall star rating of 3.25 stars out of 5. So those are my thoughts. What about yours? Could you see yourself using this reading journal? Does it have anything you love the idea of, or is it missing any essential inclusions for you? I'd love to hear about it. Let me know in the comments. In case you're still on the hunt for your perfect reading journal, here's a playlist of my previous reading journal reviews, as well as a video all about how to start a DIY reading journal in case a custom journal sounds like the right fit for you.